Hello, everyone. Very happy to be here. Super honored to be on stage, my first EG, so hopefully I don't get booed off stage.
Only if you ignore the clock.
Oh, you can ignore the clock. I'll try my best. It's a big timer right there. So my name is Benjamin Von Wong, and today I would like to share with you guys my journey on how a young man went from being a mining engineer to a wannabe environmentalist. Today I would like to share with you a mission that I have been on for the last couple years that I think I had just figured out a couple months back. Today, I would like to share with you my quest for something very specific. My quest for something began in the mines of Winnemucca, Nevada. Like with all great adventures, it started with a breakup. I found myself desperately trying to distract myself with just about anything. Unfortunately, I wasn't even 21 at the time, so alcohol was not an option. And so I lifted my head to the heavens and looked up and saw the beautiful stars and decided that I was going to take photographs of those. I had no idea how to take photos at the time, but that didn't really stop me. I went to Walmart, bought a camera, and lo and behold, my first masterpiece. It took me about 10 days. Over the next couple months, I fell in love with photography. It became a friend and companion. I brought it with me everywhere. I took pictures of everything, from places to animals to people. I tried my best to learn everything about photography, from ISO, shutter speed, aperture, composition. And after just 6 months, I was invited to shoot my first paid event. Now, this was an amazing turn of events. You never get paid to have a good time. I mean, when I grew up, you would always have to spend money in order to have a great time. So this was absolutely phenomenal. And I was paid to go backstage in concerts, in the front lines of sporting events. I was paid to go and meet people that I would never meet with otherwise. The only one problem that happened over time is that after about a year of doing this, I started getting very bored. I felt a little bit creatively stifled. I felt like I was never in control of the type of work that I was doing. I was really a slave of whatever would appear on stage. And so, once the novelty wore off, things really started to feel suspiciously like a job again. Now, I was still a mining engineer at the time, and so I decided that the only right decision to do was to quit my job as a photographer. My engineering job wasn't an option to quit. Not only was it particularly boring, it paid very well, and it made my parents happy. So, I wanted to find something unique, something personal, and something different, something that was really unique to myself. I wanted to find my own style. So I started experimenting. I didn't have access to much at the time, but I tried my best to turn the ordinary, everyday things into interesting objects. I would try to superimpose objects that were familiar, from a girl and an excavator together, to going into placing a couple costume models in front of a wall of graffiti, tearing up pieces of paper, tossing it into the air, having friends jump off chairs and tables to make it look like they were levitating. I was starting off with social media at the time, hunting for a way to engage my fan base, and they seemed to really like the surreal, special things, anything that was unexpected. So fueled by the approval and my desire to push boundaries, I found myself experimenting with special effects to take things to the next level. From liquid latex from eBay, to tossing flour around in a studio, making a huge mess in the process, to using dry ice inside of a small pond, flipping the camera upside down, capturing images that were as unique as possible. And these little tricks started creating a loyal little following of people, wondering what crazy idea I would come up with next. I continued experimenting with different ways to entertain my audience. And along the way, I discovered something very curious. I discovered that if I revealed how these tricks were done, engagement increased exponentially. Somehow, unlike a magic trick, revealing the amount of work that went into the project made people appreciate the final result even more. And so, I had found my style. It involved generally doing something crazy with someone crazy and sharing the process along the way. I had gone from just being a guy who captured photographs to someone who shared the process, inspiring them to pursue their own paths. Things were great, but unfortunately I wanted more. And so this time around there was only one clear choice, and that was, much to my parents' chagrin, to quit the day job. Now, figuring out what to do next was a little bit more of a challenge. Up until now, I had engaged a small targeted audience of people, but I desperately wanted to grow that audience. The thought process was that if I could reach more people, I could have access to more places. If I had access to more places, I would be able to create better images, and if I had better images, I would be able to reach more people. So it was this amazing cycle that I really wanted to get in on. And so to get that growth, I had it set in my mind that what I really needed was something viral. I needed something that would help project my voice and my image across the world and hopefully grow in such a way that I would always be inundated with interesting, exciting projects. So the first thing I did, or rather I did a whole bunch of things, but one of the things that I did was travel to Orlando. I collaborated with a bunch of film students, and over the course of 2 weeks we built a whole bunch of different costumes by hand. We created papier-mâché horns. We took bark, we stripped them off trees and stuck them onto pieces of muslin cloth and created costumes out of nothing. And the final result was beautiful photos, creatures in trees, maybe reminiscent a little bit of a Lord of the Rings set, but unfortunately nothing viral. And I think the problem with the photos was that they were beautiful, but they were a little bit too predictable. I traveled off to Paris, and I worked with a pyrotechnician by the name of André Das. Once again, we tried to create a viral piece by doing the craziest fire tricks captured in camera. The idea was to take multiple exposure, combine these 8-meter Kevlar ropes of fire that were creating these wings in the background with a faster exposure of a guy spitting fire together and laying all these together, and it was this amazingly complicated project to pull together. It was dangerous, it was technically impressive, but unfortunately, it was really hard for people to relate to. I think people didn't really know what they were looking at when they first checked it out. So although it was popular in the photography circles, it never went very farther than that. I traveled to London and shot a young group of creatives by the name of the Underwater Realm. David Reynolds in the front over there crowdfunded over $100,000 to make a series of short films at the age of 26. And so this was the final result, was them in action featuring some of their newest technology, a little bit of humor, a crew at work, interesting costumes, and it did pretty good. It did pretty good on Facebook, people loved it, and I think the reason why is because it featured a familiar environment that people could recognize. It featured a little bit of humor with the megaphone. It had a little bit of technology that people didn't really know what it was, so it was cool. But unfortunately, I think the title of Behind-the-Scene Photograph of the Underwater Realm didn't really work out. So it didn't have a catchy title. It didn't have anywhere for people to learn kind of more about. And so, once again, it didn't go much farther than that. And so, for 2 years, I traveled the world. I experimented. I taught photography workshops in order to pay for the bills and fund the next adventure so that I could shoot something more creative and then go teach another workshop in another country. And along the way, did a whole bunch of different projects, experimenting with ballerinas in Slovakia, merging pyrotechnics and fashion together, tossing an Asian model in front of a waterfall 9 degrees Celsius, freezing his butt off, and trying to combine different technologies together by putting ultraviolet costumes, swimming pool, dangling off of a swimming pool. So weird projects like that. And then things never really quite picked up until one day when my parents finally dragged me onto a vacation in Bali. So I say drag because I'm a workaholic. I desperately hate going on vacation because I like working. And so as a result of being dragged on vacation, I was looking for something productive to do, and I decided that since I didn't have a dive certification, that getting one of those would be great. And then I started looking for different things to do, and I found a shipwreck. And I thought, oh my gosh, a shipwreck. I got to do a project here. And so my vacation turned into a work project, and over the course of a week, we went hunting for different models, sets, costumes, tied the models down using nothing more than a rope and a hook, had a crew of safety divers watching over, filmed the entire thing, tossed it on the internet, and boom, my first viral hit, shut my website down, it was trending on Facebook, went all over the place, and I think this time around, the reason why it worked was that it had a catchy title, it was something familiar, it was something extravagant, it was something crazy, it had kind of all of the right elements in order to go viral. From there, it became all about reproducing that same formula over and over again. If I could do something creative and unexpected in a beautiful way, people would share the story and it would go viral. This shot over here was created by dressing ordinary people as superheroes, sticking them on the edge of a 40-story building in San Francisco over Market Street. And so it invoked this very familiar sense of vertigo and of danger. Even though they were safely tied down, it felt very dangerous. The characters were still familiar, even though they obviously don't necessarily look like the real superheroes. There was still something that was recognizable. And so it had all of the familiar elements necessary for it to go viral. Not only that, we had an outlet to put it out to. This was shot in San Francisco, so we targeted all of the local newspapers, reached out to them, and tried to connect them. And so this was basically the adventure. I would go around coming up with different crazy ideas, trying my best to shoot different exciting projects, from girl in big feathered costume hanging out on the edge of a cliff in Sutro Baths to going to the largest monastic library in the world up in Austria and Stiefdadmont to create a shot reminiscent of Beauty and the Beast. And finally, after all of these creative projects, I finally got, I think, my dream project at the time. The dream project was to get a global campaign. I think that a lot of creatives have this dream of getting paid to do what they do best. And so for me, getting paid more money than I had ever gotten for any project to do a single photo shoot, which was a fun challenge. It was take a photo of a fire angel using our cell phone and no Photoshop. And it was a fun challenge. We took a month to put the whole thing together, but at the end, it left me feeling very empty. It left me wondering, well, what do I do next? I have gotten this big project. It was fun. What could I possibly hope for? A bigger campaign so that I could make more money, to do more viral projects, just so that I could make more money. It didn't really make sense to me. It was a loophole, and so I felt really, really trapped, and I didn't know what to do next. And so once again, I found myself looking for something to do with my life. And so I couldn't quite figure out what that was. And so I started thinking about which were the projects that impacted me the most over time. I thought of Tyler Grace, a chronically ill fan who I decided to surprise by packing myself in a box and showing up on his doorstep for his 21st birthday. His sister had reached out to me by email saying that, Tyler is chronically ill and he would really love to meet me one day, except that they were on welfare and there was just no way for them to ever, travel in person. And so I decided that, since I was in Singapore at the time, why not just pop myself over to Australia and, see the country and go hang out with him. And so what we did at the end was take him on a one-week adventure. I mean, this guy had never seen kangaroos before, and he's from Australia. And so it was just this amazing opportunity to make someone's dream come true, and all I had to do was buy myself a plane ticket and go there. We took this photo together because he told me that he had never had a photo taken with his sister, and he really wanted something that represented the struggles they went through, so wading through mud towards a hopefully better future. I thought of Eliza, a little girl suffering from a terminal degenerative brain disease called Sanfilippo syndrome, for whom I made a viral video that raised about $2 million over the course of a couple years. The story there is that her father, Glenn O'Neill, actually reached out, desperately trying to find a solution to fund a cure for their little daughter who was dying of a disease that nobody really wanted to fund. And so in his mind, the only solution was to make a viral video. Now, I wasn't a videographer, but I knew how to make things go viral, and so when he reached out, I thought that this could be a really fun challenge. Why not try to raise a lot of money in a really short amount of time? Their goal was to raise, at the time, I think the time limit was 3 months, raise $1 million. They had this whole deadline set up in terms of how much they needed to raise by when. And I told them that I could fly there in 1 month and sleep on the couch and make something for them, if no one else was going to do it. And he said, well, no one else is going to do it, so if you want to come by, let's go. So I flew myself in, made a video over the first month. In the first month after launch, we actually did manage to hit $1 million, went on national TV, everything. And so it was just this phenomenal experience of being able to take what I had learned and putting it at the service of others. And so I realized that my most memorable projects, the ones that mattered to me the most, were the ones that were also the most meaningful. The most meaningful, not just for me, but meaningful at the service of others. Now, I had one problem, though. All of these projects that I had done that were the most meaningful to me were all video projects. They didn't really fit my surreal, epic style that I had developed over the years. And unless people really requested it, putting real struggles of real people in a fantasy world was really not considered the best approach. And so for a while, I contemplated if the right decision was quitting photography altogether and putting my skills to better use. And so enter storm chasing. Yes, there's a connection there. One day, my girlfriend comes up to me with a proposal. This was less than a year ago. She came up to me and she's like, Ben, we're going to go storm chasing. I looked up at her and I said, Anna, what's the point? There's no purpose putting a model in front of a storm. It'll look cool, it'll be complicated, it'll go viral, but what's the point? There's no purpose to it. And she said, well, what if we make it about climate change? And I was like, ooh, climate change. Now that's a big thing. I obviously know that climate change is a problem. I knew that it was a big thing. I knew that a lot of people were talking about it, but I didn't really know much about it because I never wanted to learn more about it. And so this was the perfect opportunity for me to learn a little bit more about climate change. And so I dove into this brand new world of climate change, discovered all these different things about it. And so we had this idea of going chasing. This was about 3 weeks later. We found ourselves chasing storms in the Great Plains of the United States with an ambulance, and this was definitely one of the most difficult shoots that I had done to date, because the idea was that the storms were moving at 50 miles per hour. We would chase them for about 8 hours a day. We would have minutes to set up with supporters that had just met, and they had never had any idea of how long we would be chasing or where we would end up. The project idea was very simple. Let's just take normal, ordinary people, put them in front of a big brewing storm, and then have the background of the storm almost be a sort of analogy towards this coming storm. It didn't matter if we ignored it. Climate change doesn't clear if you ignore it. And so we had a whole bunch of different props, and they were decided based on how many props we could fit into an ambulance. And so along the way, we built these different sets and generally had a great time. So this project really got me excited because it was the first time that I had actually been able to take my skills, combine all of the surreal, viral, epic stuff that I had done, and actually put it at the service of something useful, something more meaningful, something with a greater good. And so we hit the second project that I wanted to do. And so for a couple months, I was looking for the next project, and I couldn't quite figure that one out, as the way things go. And so when I was invited to Fiji to teach a workshop there, I started looking around to wonder what I could possibly do while I was in Fiji. And I was talking to a friend, Eric Chang, I think he's in the audience, he was flying the drone earlier, and he told me that Fiji had world-class shark dives and that I should probably do something. I was like, ooh, sharks. Yes, I want to do something with sharks. I've never seen sharks before. I know that they're in danger. There's this whole finning thing. A lot of people talk about it. So there must be something really interesting. And so once again, I dove into research about the ocean. I started researching and learning more about sharks. I learned about the overfishing, about the 100 million sharks that are killed every year, about the horrors of the finning industry. And I tried to use that knowledge to create an image that would showcase a relationship, perhaps a harmonious one, instead of this Hollywood scary one that we hear about all the time, of a girl and a shark coexisting, and I wanted that girl to be a shark shepherd. So I bought a shepherd's crook on Amazon, we flew off to Fiji, got a bunch of wedding dress sent over, the model flew herself in from Australia, I collaborated with a local dive shop, and then we tied her down, waited for sharks to swim around. And so the basic idea was very, very clear. The basic idea was create an image that got people to wonder, because when you look on a Facebook feed, when you look on an Instagram feed, as people are just whirling by, consuming tons of media every single day, the only reason they're going to stop is if it's something they haven't seen before. It has to be something that gets them wondering how it was done. What am I looking at? Is it something worth my time? And then if you can sell the idea to them, then they'll click on it. And then you have an opportunity there to teach them. Maybe not preach at them, because preaching never works, but just to sneak it in there, just say that there is a problem and there's something that you can do about it with a call to action. And so at the end of this project, we slapped a petition to the entire thing with a call to action to encourage the creation of more shark sanctuaries in Malaysia. And so over, I think, the last couple months, we got 80-some thousand petition signatures as a result, and I think they're moving forward with shark sanctuaries in Malaysia, which is really, really awesome. And so with this second success, I realized that I might be onto something. I realized that there was a way to create work that was simultaneously meaningful, unique, and viral. And the only remaining challenge was to figure out what project to work on next. And that's where you come in. I've decided to take a year off work to embark on this journey to do as many surreal environmental projects as possible. I believe that I can use art to trick people into caring and learning more about the world that we live in. I have at my disposal a little army of fans and supporters, makeup artists, designers, who are just dying to participate in other creative projects. And so if you have a cause that is close to you, if you want to raise funds or you need support for something, you just need some awesome visuals, I would love for you to reach out and for us to do something amazing together and make the world a better place. Thank you.